Kazakhstan is the world's most important country to Russia outside of China. It's the ninth largest country and it's wedged between Russia and China. It has a very rich history as being part of the Silk Road, which connected China and India over to Europe through Greece. The earliest use of horses took place in this country. Now, of course, there wasn't such a thing as Kazakhstan thousands of years ago, but there was the Eurasian steppes, which is mostly where Kazakhstan is. Before Islam became the prevalent religion of Kazakhstan, it was a home for Zoroastrianism, Manichaeism, and Tengriism, which is an incredible form of shamanic sky worship. By the 18th and 19th century, they were partially and then fully incorporated into the Russian Empire through wars and treaties, and it stayed this way until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. But even though Kazakhstan has been its own sovereign state for the past 40 years, Russia has had their claws deep in them for a lot of reasons. For one, they have a 7,500 kilometer long border with Russia, which is also translated in about 4,500 miles. They have a significantly smaller population than Russia, unlike China, which means Russia can push the Kazakhs around a little bit more. And I'll elaborate on that very soon. Russia also relies on Kazakhstan to be some kind of buffer state to China. Then, of course, there's oil. Russia still relies heavily on former Soviet infrastructure that has their pipelines running all through Kazakhstan. Then there's the fact that Kazakhstan has a lot of its own oil and natural gas, and the oil is much higher quality than Russian Urals. Because a lot of Kazakh oil is transported through Russian pipelines to other countries in Europe, Russia gets to charge a lot of the fees. Like I've mentioned before about their size, they are the largest and most economically powerful country in Central Asia. That's why even though when there was the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh, Russia didn't really care. They told Armenia, hey, you're on your own. But when Kazakhstan had their own version of January 6th in 2022, Russia sent in their troops through the CSTO. The Kazakhs weren't protesting who got elected. They were protesting at first high fuel prices, and then they were just protesting how poorly the government was run. It was a sad day. 238 people died, hundreds if not thousands were severely injured. Now, did these protests have the desired effect? I think yes. Kazakhstan's first president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, was holding on to power even though he was no longer the president for quite some time, and it allowed him to enact a lot of, let's just say, selfish, detrimental policies that did not serve in the best interests of the Kazakh people. And current president Kassym Tokayev did not want Nazarbayev's influence in the government, and it looks like the riots helped him kick a lot of that out. Economic reforms, crackdowns on monopolies, and a lot of corruption was investigated and in some places stomped out, thanks to these protests and Kassym Tokayev's efforts. And it looks like President Tokayev is not a big fan of Russia, even though he's being very diplomatic about it. Of course, he's not slapping Russia directly in the face because that's a much more powerful northern neighbor. But you could see just the will of the Kazakh people is not on the side of Putin. In fact, the Kazakh government has not issued any support towards Russia's military special operation. Russia's aggression towards Ukraine has pushed Kazakhstan further to the west, because they know that is where more opportunity and prosperity lies. Unfortunately, Russia is partially evading sanctions put on them by the West by going through Kazakhstan with oil and other resources. It's very easy for Russia to do this because, look, it's a huge border, so all Russia needs to do is get whatever goods they want to sell into Kazakhstan and then have Kazakhstan export it. Look, Kazakhstan's imports, 27% of that is from Russia, while the other 27% is from China. And Kazakhstan does rely on Russia for 12% of their exports. But still, the Kazakhs let Russia know, we're not going to do everything you want. Kazakhs are never going to like Russia or look favorably upon Russia because there's just such a horrendous history of imperialism, but also the Holodomor. Ukraine isn't the only one that went through a horrible famine under idiotic Soviet policies. Kazakhstan lost over 1.5 million people due to Stalin's incompetence with agriculture and economics. And the government knows they have to take a very measured approach to Russia while still befriending Europe and America. Fun fact, Kazakhstan refused to join BRICS, even though Russia was pressuring them to do it. Russia said, join BRICS or we will ban all fruit and vegetables from your country. Kazakhstan just said, okay, well, we're right next to China, and China is the world's largest importer of food, so we'll be okay. Looks like Kazakhstan might be bypassing Russian oil pipelines to get their energy to Turkey and the rest of Europe. That's bad because 80% of Kazakh oil does flow through Russia, meaning Russia will be collecting much less in fees. Ironically, it's called the BTSA pipeline, and it goes through Kazakhstan across the Caspian Sea, and it ends up in Turkey without touching 1 inch of Russian territory. This makes an ocean of economic opportunities for Kazakhstan, and it also makes Europe and other countries like Turkey much less reliant on Russia for any kind of hydrocarbons. Speaking of hydrocarbons, Russia is trying to get gasoline from Kazakhstan, even though Russia is one of the largest producers of that material. It might be because the Ukrainians are bombing the refineries left and right. Either way, connection to Europe and the West is something Kazakhstan needs, especially because their currency is so tied into the Russian ruble. Their currency, called the tenge, has dropped over 15% since the beginning of the year, and as Russia's economic power, influence, and currency withers away, that harms Kazakhstan's ability to import what they need. And the BTC pipeline is one of the crucial instruments to get this currency back up, and of course the Kazakh economy more diversified. I am the Geo Husar. I hope you liked this post. And if you did like this post, you have Aslan Tlesov to thank for pressuring me and hounding me to finally finish this up. And Aslan, I hope you learned something from this post. Thank you for being so supportive and being on my lives almost every time I'm on. Thanks for watching.